here with Mitch Young and Evan Addams today. They're joining us remotely as we're all at home from Richbarn Roasters. Welcome, guys. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks, Damon.
Yeah.
So we'd love to just start off with hearing what Richbarn is all about, how it came to be, kind of what the vision was. And I have to say that I got my Guatemalan roast 2 days ago, courtesy of Mitch putting it in my mailbox. And I thank you, but I will tell you that my wife and my kids thank you even more because I am a terror to be around without my coffee. But yeah, thank you. And as the saying goes, I'm a user, I'm a believer, and also a customer too. So you guys can kind of fire away, but would love to hear what the story of Richbarn is, how it came to be, and kind of what's top of mind, why it's so important right now.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitch. Kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, Evan and I have known each other for a long time. And we were from roommates in college to helping grow a business together to being best friends. I mean, the dude was in my wedding, and we've always shared a passion for coffee. It's something that we've always enjoyed. And I think Evan is a very entrepreneurial individual and understands how to take initiative and build things from the ground up. I oftentimes am more of a, okay, if Evan's doing it, let's go. And it just makes sense because I'd follow that dude into battle. And it was interesting because 2 weeks ago, I was in an entrepreneurial venture with a guy here in Pittsburgh building out a business. And because of COVID-19, not only was I laid off, but our company was shut down. And so, of course, one of the first people that I reached out to for comfort and honestly prayer and just some encouragement was Evan. And I told him what had happened, that I was going to be starting a job search. And of course, in Evan's optimistic and positive fashion, he's like, hey man, why don't we do something with this? We've always wanted to do this coffee thing. I know you just got laid off, but you got extra time now. Let's be honest. We could probably roast some more coffee. Why don't we do this coffee thing that we've always thought about doing, but do so in a way that we can meet people in a similar situation to you, people who have just lost their jobs unexpectedly, and give them a cup of coffee as they're trying to search for a job. For me, it was tough to lose my job. I believed a lot in what we were doing, and we were like on that 1 yard line ready to go. But I knew in that moment, hey, you got to wake up. You still got to figure out, how do I spread hope and positivity, and how do I show that to my children, as now I am searching for a job in a very unstable time for our country. And I couldn't do that without coffee, man. Like, I was so tired and so exhausted. And so I went out, I was brewing the coffee, and Evan was like, let's just do this, man. Let's roast coffee. Let's sell bags. And for every bag that we sell, we could actually donate a bag to people who have lost their jobs, in the greater Pittsburgh region. And that really sunk in. I think it hit my heart because even him saying that, I felt cared for. Like, wow, like it might only be a couple people that we can reach. It might only be somebody that we can touch with a free bag of coffee so that they can lift their spirits and also their energy levels while they're already pretty down. And I trust Evan and his business judgment and how he can run something. And I get really excited about coffee, and I like to roast, and I had time to roast. And so next thing we know, Evan is giving me a call saying, hey, we got the EIN, we've got the LLC ready, we've got the domain secured, we're ready to go. And I'm like, all right, we're doing this. And now we're roasting coffee from sun up to sundown and fulfilling orders every day of the week. So it happened pretty quickly.
That's awesome. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I think that, the theme that really resonates with me is that, there's a lot of coffee drinkers out there. I am not a coffee connoisseur, but I think coffee embodies a lot more to a lot of people than just what you drink in the morning, right? And I think that you guys have particularly, it sounds like, hit on, this is a way to help people. This is a positive outlet for what you're focused on. This is, you say in your website that it's the intentional cup. So there's some intentionality behind it, and being intentional with that time and those actions. But you also talk about the goal is to create a perfect cup at home so that you can invite each other and others to your home. And admittedly, we can't do that under certain social distancing guidelines, but still, it just amazes me you guys are very clearly, and maybe you can talk about this, Evan, intentionally not just a coffee company that's roasting beans and selling them, right? It comes across as there's a mission behind this, there's a purpose, and the word that really resonates is some intentionality.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that a little bit, or does that resonate with how you think about it, Evan?
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think there's two parts to it. The first, and I'll hit the more, Mitch talked about the business side of, you referenced the business side of things, so I'll hit that side of it. There was, personally for me over the last couple of years, coffee became a bigger part of my life. It had something to do with the last couple of years also is when I became a dad, and my hourly bandwidth changed, I suppose. So as my life developed in that way, coffee became a bigger part of it. And I started to appreciate, I mean, mostly through my friendship with Mitch, began to really appreciate both flavor of coffee, but also just that moment of being able to sit down, whether it was with him as a friend. He knows that I probably consume more coffee after 9 p.m. than I do between 5 a.m. and 9. It's like my evening thing. So like we'd get together late at night sometimes when the kids were in bed, and I'd be at his house and I'd have a cup of coffee, and he'd be in pajamas, and we'd be hanging out. So there's that moment, but there was also this moment of when my wife and I could steal away for a second. And and not to speak ill of any other form of coffee, but there was something less, I'll use that word, less intentional around popping a pod into a quick machine, grabbing a quick coffee that's basically just your caffeine to get going in the morning. And you go your separate ways. It's kind of like the comparison of, what's happened to the family dinner, right? Like when it's to go and no one's sitting down, everyone's grabbing something quick, bag of chips, whatever, and everyone's going different directions, compared to when you have a moment just to make a good meal that brings the right people to the family to the table for a brief amount of time where you can just be together. And that started to happen for me and my wife. And one of the things that allowed that to happen was the coffee itself to be like, the coffee itself was good. As Mitch and I Mitch mostly was making this coffee, and it was in my house. My wife all of a sudden was like, I don't want Keurig stuff. I want Mitch's coffee. Like, this is great. I want to sit down and get up and have a cup of coffee with you. And so Mitch and I started to talk about, hey, even aside from business model, like, can we scale that experience? Can we, like, we'll talk about dollars in a second, but can we take that experience and get that into every home to encourage relationships and encourage that intentional conversation where coffee is the conduit that makes it happen?
Yeah. Well, that it's very clearly comes across and kind of how you guys position the brand or position the mission too. So, and it definitely resonates with me. I'm a father of 2 young kids. My wife and I have a 2.5-year-old and a 7-month-old at home. And they chose last night of all nights to both double team and not sleep well. So the coffee is utilitarian in a sense this morning. I really need it. But to your point, I find too that some of my favorite moments are Saturday morning when we get up and my wife and I brew a fresh pot and we sit there and it's just quiet, right? And that's really it's the coffee is it's the thing that we just kind of sit around and enjoy together as a team, as it were. So
yeah,
very cool. So you mentioned a little bit, Mitch, but before I ask a couple other questions about the business and other things that you're excited about, the COVID-19 program that you guys are focused on specifically, can you talk just about the mechanics of that? What is it specifically? What kind of response you see and just unpack that a bit for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, full credit for that idea does go to Evan, because in his heart of hearts, he was, seeing my hurt and my pain in the midst of me losing my job. And he was like, well, why don't we take that and turn it into hope and positivity and donate these bags? And I think that's ultimately what launched this business to begin with. And it was very quick. And we're talking the time span of maybe 24 to 48 hours after that happened. We had a website up and going, and we were ready to roll, thinking we'd only get a couple orders. But I think that positioning, that mission, is what has not only resonated with people in the greater Pittsburgh area, but people all across the country. We had a post on LinkedIn that had over 50,000 impressions and views within the time span of almost 3 days, Evan? I forget And we had orders coming in from Washington, D.C., from Texas, from California, like people all over the country. They're like, wow, this is a tangible way that we think, we're stuck at home. There's not a ton we can do to help. But if this is something I can do and I need coffee anyways, well, I can buy it from here and then I can actually help somebody who desperately needs coffee in the midst of this. And so initially what we did is, we didn't know how many orders we'd get. We had no clue. And so in the emails, you'd place an order, you'd get it, and then we'd actually have people suggesting, hey, this is a person I have in my mind that I would love to give that donated bag to. Because I think at this point, Damon, Evan, we know this, like all of us know somebody who has been impacted by COVID-19 now. And it weighs on us because all we want to do is help them, but we feel very helpless in our ability to do so. And so it was astounding to see how many people reached out, placed orders and said, man, here are 2 people, at my company that we had to actually lay off. Could I I'm going to buy 2 bags and could we donate 2 bags to these 2 employees that we just let go? I'm like, man, of course, like that's great. Like that's the whole purpose. And so people were bringing in those names and then we started to collect names because Evan and I are pretty connected across, the Pittsburgh network at least. And obviously, especially in the startup world, man, the furloughs, the layoffs, and they're rampant. And so the names just kept piling up and, we're trying to get those bags out as quickly as we possibly can because that's the whole reason we exist. But it's almost independent of quality of coffee aside. And to Evan's credit, it's the ability for somebody to step up and help somebody that is making this brand take off. And I'm actually grateful that it's not even about our brand right now. Like that's not it. This is about helping somebody in as small of a way possible so that a bunch of micro acts of giving can hopefully create this macro movement of generosity and hope. And I think that, it's poised to hopefully spread a lot of caffeine in way more places than just Pittsburgh at this point.
Yeah, that's shocking. But it's shocking in the same vein as it's not to hear that so many people reached out from across the country. And I was struggling for the words a little bit earlier when I say my wife and I, get up and have that moment. It's kind of the facilitator of that moment. And what I think you guys have hit on, it's so important, is that a lot of us just feel we do know it. We do know people, if not personally, we do know people have been impacted by this. And we just want to do something, right? Like, it feels so helpless to be in your home and to feel like I can't help this person except via phone call or how other ways of communication. And I think you guys have hit on something that allows people is a facilitator for that energy. I want to do something. I want to reach out. I want to be intentional, and I want to send them something. So that's awesome. Really, really special. So I want to be respectful of everyone's time too. It is early in the morning for us, and we're all trying to get up and running. But also wanted to talk to you a little bit about, you're both veteran businessmen in your own right. You've had multiple businesses, probably juggling multiple projects and businesses at the same time. Kind of 2-part question, what excites you about this business in particular, aside from the human factor and the intentionality and all the things that we've been circling around? So what excites you about it? What motivates you? And then what really keeps you motivated during the challenging time that we're in? There's so many different things weighing on everyone's mind, and if you think of your energy in your day as a finite amount of time, because it is where you can spend it, what keeps you motivated and excited about this particular endeavor?
Yeah,
maybe we'll start with Evan.
So that the comment I made around wanting to scale that experience that my family has had based upon great coffee. So I'll pivot that same thing into the business context. For me, and this comes a little bit out of Peter Thiel's 0 to 1. He starts off that book, if you haven't read it, sort of like the Startup Bible, where he basically says the core question, and I'm paraphrasing this, but the core question you want to ask when you're launching a business is, what do you believe about the world? Oh, there you go. Mitch has it at the ready. What do you believe? We are not sponsored. Not
yet.
and it's basically, what do you believe about the world that most people would disagree with you? Or what do you believe about the world that the world should be doing better? That's like the core question of entrepreneurism. And so when I had this experience and I said, let's scale it, it was actually like, let's change the world so that this experience is more common. And what I started to do personally with my dollars is I was I was going to Mitch saying, hey, Mitch, I personally want more coffee. I want this experience. So I want to pay for beans. I want to start just between the two of us, this business together. And then other friends, we would tell them about this experience, and friends and family started to say to us, we want that experience. And because of that, we started to actually see this desired experience turn into this mission for the business. I had gone years of whether it was through Mitch or through other wholesale companies starting to purchase beans to create this experience at home. And so then we realized, okay, there is something to a direct to consumer coffee business. If you go online, you see a number of these types of things start to pop up, different missions or different angles of how to do it. But something that's different than a local coffee shop who also sells beans, right? This is a company that is engineered almost like, we think about this a little bit, Mitch, like a tech company where you're thinking about creating a membership base or a user base, a community that forms not around a brick and mortar facility, but around the product of the bean. And so we started to take a B2C type of mentality, which is what we did at No Wait when we were launching what we call the guest application, or the consumer application allowed you to put your name in line through your phone. We started to unlock that type of mentality, and just do a couple quick viral things just to test the waters to see, like, are we crazy? We friends and family, maybe they just are feeling guilty to buy some beans. What would this look like? So we put just a couple social media pings. And like Mitch said, 50,000 plus views in the first 72 hours. You have 40 plus bags sold right off the bat. We had to pause and actually put it on the website real quick. So, we popped it back up, but it was one of those fun stories of like, oh man, we did not expect to see that type of result.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny, Damon, because like even that side of it, like I always think of, with this, I've learned everything that I know from Evan, and he probably will disagree with that. But like I've ridden that man's coattails for a long time, and I'm going to continue to do it because he's
everything is all encompassing. That means the bad habits too, Evan. So drinking coffee at 9 o'clock at night,
Just wait, Mitch.
No, that's where we differ, because I transitioned into the cocktail zone at that point, Damon. No, it's interesting. Like even the way that we're handling this, we literally set up, a HubSpot instance for Richbarn. Like we're managing this the same way that we would manage a tech revenue organization, and we're measuring conversion percentages, impressions to first to second emails, to understanding click-through rates, to purchase orders. Like we're literally trying to replicate the exact same things that I learned from Evan in the business world, but now applying the same thing to Richbarn. And what's encouraging to me, because you said what excites us about this, dude, I'm seeing higher conversion percentages from what we're doing with this than I ever saw in the tech world. And I think it's because that level of intentionality, not just the cup that's at home, but the intentionality in our outreach protocol, our intentionality in follow-ups, our intentionality in, getting a first-time buyer who has the experience that you had, Damon, where it's really good, but then engaging them 7 to 10 days later to ask if they want to bump up to a subscription model where we can just automatically deliver 1 or 2 bags a month. I think we can actually apply predictable revenue-based principles to a coffee business. And that's exciting, because on the surface, you think, does the tech apply to coffee? And I don't think they just apply. I think that the synergies they're amazing.
Yeah, well, it's really insightful, and to be able to apply all those past learnings and some of those metrics and business approaches to this is phenomenal, right? It's a great experience that you guys can leverage. We've talked about the intentionality a lot, but the other thing I would say is that I've made my career in sales and business development and being outward facing and talking to customers, and I truly believe that customers have this kind of sixth sense that they can just sense authenticity. I think that that is so critical. And, I have the benefit of knowing you, Mitch, personally. Evan and I talked about that we've shared exchanges back and forth, but haven't been face-to-face much. But there is an authenticity that comes across in your message, your mission, and just the way you approach the whole thing that, hats off to you guys. It's very clearly a labor of love, and is having a huge, huge impact. So
thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my last question is, we got to focus on coffee, right? Who would you most like to share a cup of coffee with? Anyone in history, anyone in, if you could sit down and be intentional with that moment, um, you know, who out there would you probably pick?
Evans is going to be so deep and thought through. I just know it.
I don't want to put you guys on the spot, but at the same time, there's something to be said for where your head first goes and who you first think of,
I mean,
I will partake in it as well. It's not just, one way. So,
I mean, I'll kick us off. This is probably not nearly as deep, meaningful, or philosophical as Evan's answer will undoubtedly be. But, dude, mine isn't even a figure in history. It's a figure that's today. But I think I would want to share a cup of coffee with Bob Goff. He's my favorite author of all time. He wrote a book called Love Does. And really the whole concept of that book is that love isn't a thought. Love is an action. And the way that we love others is through our actions. And I literally have a tattoo in Greek on my arm that literally says agape, which translates to love does. And It's a constant motivation for me to think through, hey, are the things that I'm doing today showing love to those around me? And if they're not, then I got to stop and I got to pivot. And that man, his authorship, what he does, dude, it's just, it has completely changed my view of my purpose in life. And to have coffee with that dude, I would love it.
That's good. I don't know, Evan. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm a history dude, so I go all over the place, and I'm actually gonna pull back and not someone who's actually still around today. My favorite musical artist by far, I think he's like changed the world for the better, is Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to meet him. I had been in proximity to him before, and it's like I've met famous people, and I feel like I can hold my own. But when I've been within feet of him, I've melted. And so to sit with him and catch up and hear about. I mean, he's just a really interesting time to grow up through the 60s, and obviously he's blind, so he's gone through, overcome a lot. And so, but beyond that, I just would love to pick his brain. I could go deeper with other people, and you can give your rote like Abraham Lincoln, like the American heroes.
Yeah, right.
But I think if I picked right now, I'd sit down with Stevie and talk some music and have some fun.
Those are pretty good. Those are great. I mean, and I think it's obviously a personal preference. So I went the other way in that I think I'd probably share a cup of coffee with my late grandfather. He passed when I was probably, I think, 12 years old. And I knew him. I have some really fond memories of him, but just knowing what I know about him now and learning about him after he passed, and then just being, I think, a little wiser, as the gray hair will attest, hopefully. And actually, coffee was a little bit of a bond. There are two smells that kind of immediately take me back to being in his house when I was a kid. One is cherry pipe tobacco.
Yes.
And then the other is Folgers coffee out of the big can. You remember the big, Folgers in your cup? He used to make that and always have it around his house. And I think I'd just love to sit down with him and, ask him about his experiences. And he is definitely a hero of mine, and things that, I try to emulate in my life trace largely back to him. So
that's powerful. That's awesome. I mean, you look back through, especially American history, in 20th century and coffee. I'll tell you a couple years ago, I picked up again Grapes of Wrath by Steinbeck, and all through that. I mean, as tough of a story as that is, they constantly refer to the breakfast that this poor family has in the coffee and how they make their coffee. And it's made in it's they don't have Mr. Coffee machines or anything, but they save their grounds, they reuse them. And it's at the centerpiece of this early 20th century or mid 20th century American culture. And the stories that those families share, I know that's a novel, but you think about that era of people, and coffee has changed, right? We are making a higher quality bean per se today, but that experience and intentional moment is powerful. And I don't know, with your person there, your grandfather is that's a great one.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for the time. Great to spend time with you, and over a cup of coffee, no less. And thank you for Guatemalan roast. I'm looking forward to doing my subscription, Mitch, and also trying some of the other beans. But the Guatemalan hit it out of the park. I mean, I got it out of the mailbox. The package you guys are using, you can kind of smell it through a little bit of the packaging.
Uh-huh.
I did a happy dance in the street. Great. So,
that's awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah. So we didn't say at the top of our video, but richbarnroasters.com, right? Obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the COVID-19 program that you guys are doing, again, all the more reason, as if you needed any more reason to get great coffee and support a great mission and a local company, I think is phenomenal. So thank you guys for taking the time, and have a great rest of your day after you're on to your next cup.
Awesome. Thanks, man.